The holographic display in the UN security chamber cast an ethereal blue glow across the faces of Earth's most powerful leaders. Admiral James Morrison stood before them, his weathered features illuminated by the rotating image of what appeared to be a tear in space itself, a wound in the fabric of reality that stretched across 3 solar systems. 48 hours ago, our quantum array detected this anomaly moving through the Arcturus sector, Morrison said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. The Centauri Observatory confirmed it shortly after. Whatever this thing is, it's heading straight for Sol, and it's moving faster than anything we've ever encountered. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Secretary General Patel raised her hand, silencing the room. Admiral, you're telling us this entity covered 3 solar systems in less than 2 days. Yes, Mom, and it's accelerating. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the observation gallery above, her fingers unconsciously tracing the silver pendant at her neck. A quantum processor chip, the first one she'd ever built. At 35, she was the youngest person ever to head the Quantum Propulsion Division of the Earth Defense Force. And right now, she knew something none of them did. The Proxima Centauri colony, someone shouted. Have they reported any effects? Morrison's jaw tightened. Proxima went dark 6 hours ago. Complete communications blackout. Our last transmission from them described a sensation of mental pressure, as if something was trying to think at them. The room fell silent. Humanity had faced threats before, the Rigel incursion, the Mars crisis. But this was different. This wasn't a conventional enemy they could fight with ships and weapons. Sarah's comlink buzzed. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her chief researcher, had sent a single message. It worked. Her heart raced. The prototype had survived the final test. Maybe that's why they'd called her here today. The Thunderchild project wasn't supposed to be ready for another 3 months, but now, what are our options? Patil asked, her voice cutting through Sarah's thoughts. The combined fleet is mobilizing, Morrison replied. But even with our fastest ships, we can only get 30% of our forces in position before it arrives. The Europan defense grid is charged and ready, but based on our observations, conventional weapons may be useless against this entity. Sarah stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the chamber. Every head turned toward her. There might be another way. Morrison nodded, gesturing for her to continue. They'd planned this, she realized. They'd already decided. Project Thunderchild. She began, bringing up a new hologram. A sleek vessel appeared, its dark hull seeming to bend light around it. We've developed something new, something that might let us communicate with this entity, or stop it if we have to. 1 ship, General Zhao scoffed. Against something that size. Size may be irrelevant, Sarah countered. Our quantum-fold technology doesn't just let us manipulate spacetime for propulsion. It lets us interface with higher dimensional space. This entity exists partially in those dimensions. We think it might be conscious. The chamber erupted again, but Sarah continued. We've built the Thunderchild to do more than just travel through space. It can create quantum resonance patterns that might let us communicate with higher dimensional beings. Or, if necessary, disrupt their conscious processes. And if you're wrong? Patil asked quietly. Sarah met her gaze. Then humanity tried something bold instead of dying conventionally. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could almost hear their thoughts, counting ships that wouldn't arrive in time, calculating casualties they couldn't prevent, weighing options that didn't exist. How soon can you launch? Morrison asked. The ship is ready. My team has been running final simulations for weeks. We can be spacebound in 12 hours. A crew, already selected and trained. 12 specialists, the best in their fields. Small enough to maximize the ship's quantum efficiency, large enough to handle any contingency. Patil stood, her decision visible in her posture before she spoke. The combined fleet will continue to mobilize as a fallback, but Operation Silent Thunder is now our primary response. Captain Chen, you have full authorization. Whatever you need. It's yours." As the chamber emptied, Morrison approached Sarah. "You didn't tell them everything," he said quietly. "No," she admitted. "I didn't tell them that our simulations show a 90% chance the quantum interface will be traumatic for the crew. I didn't tell them that interfacing with a higher dimensional consciousness might change us in ways we can't predict. They don't need to know that. They deserve to know the risks." Sarah touched her pendant again. "The entity will reach Earth in 72 hours. Everyone on this planet deserves a chance to survive. Sometimes the right thing to do isn't the safe thing to do." She turned to leave, then paused. "Admiral, why did you really support this?" Morrison smiled sadly. "Because in all our history of facing extinction-level threats, our conventional responses have only gotten us so far. Maybe it's time we tried something unconventional. Maybe it's time we reminded the universe why humanity has survived everything it's thrown at us." Sarah nodded and headed for the exit. In 12 hours, she and her crew would attempt something no human had ever tried before. They would reach into the mind of a being that thought in dimensions they could barely comprehend, and they would either save humanity or transform it forever. The Thunderchild waited. The Thunderchild hung in low Earth orbit like a shadow given form. From the approaching shuttle, Sarah watched how the ship's quantum absorption hull seemed to drink in the light of nearby stars. Even the Earth's reflection slid off its surface like water from oil, beautiful and impossible, just as they'd designed it to be. "Final systems check complete," Dr. Tanaka's voice crackled through her headset. "Quantum core is stable at 97% efficiency, better than any simulation." Sarah smiled. Yuki had been against coming on the actual mission, arguing she'd be more useful coordinating from ground control. But there was no one who understood the quantum fold drive better, and they'd need every advantage they could get. The shuttle docked with a gentle shudder. Through the airlock window, Sarah saw First Officer Marcus Rivera waiting. His dark eyes carried the same intensity they had during their first meeting 3 years ago, when she'd recruited him from the Europan Deep Space Initiative. "Captain," he nodded as she entered. The crews assembled in the bridge. They walked through corridors that seemed to absorb sound itself. The quantum absorption hull wasn't just for show. It made the ship nearly invisible to both conventional sensors and higher dimensional scanning. They hoped it would let them get close enough to the entity before it detected them. The bridge doors slid open silently. 10 faces turned toward them, each chosen not just for their expertise, but for their ability to think beyond conventional boundaries. Dr. Elena Santos, psychologist, who'd developed new theories about non-human consciousness. Lieutenant Commander Kai Chen, no relation, quantum mechanics specialist. Dr. James Wilson, whose work on higher dimensional mathematics had revolutionized their understanding of spacetime. "Status report," Sarah commanded, settling into the captain's chair. "All systems nominal," Kai reported from his station. "Quantum core is holding steady. Fold generators are primed and ready. Medical bay is prepped for any contingencies," Dr. Maya Patil added. "Though I still have concerns about the potential neural stress from the quantum interface." Sarah nodded. They'd all been briefed on the risks. The human brain wasn't designed to process higher dimensional information. The neural interfaces they'd developed would help, but there was no way to know for sure what would happen when they actually made contact. "Distance to the entity?" she asked. "Approximately 18 light hours in closing," Marcus answered. "Its speed has increased by another 12% in the last hour." Sarah activated the main view screen. The entity appeared as a distortion in space, like looking through warped glass, but the quantum sensors revealed more. Patterns of energy and information flowing through dimensions they could barely detect, let alone understand. "Dr. Santos," Sarah called. "Your analysis." Elena stepped forward, her movements deliberate. "The pattern analysis confirms our initial hypothesis. The entity is demonstrating signs of consciousness, but on a scale we can barely comprehend. Its thoughts might take years to complete, spanning multiple star systems. The blackout at Proxima. It might have been trying to think, hello." And killed an entire colony in the process, Marcus muttered. Not intentionally, Alina countered. Imagine an ant trying to comprehend a human footstep. The scale difference is so vast that communication seems impossible. But we're not ants. We've built something new. Sarah stood, drawing all eyes. The quantum fold technology doesn't just let us manipulate space-time. It lets us create a bridge between our consciousness and the higher dimensions where the entity exists. We won't just be sending signals, we'll be reaching out mind to mind. And if it thinks back? Maya asked quietly. That's why we're here, Sarah replied. The neural interfaces should protect us, and the quantum core can generate defensive resonance patterns if needed. But our goal is communication, not confrontation. She looked at each crew member in turn. In 6 hours, we'll attempt first contact. Get some rest. Run your final checks. What we're about to try has never been done before. We're about to reach across dimensions and touch the mind of something that thinks in galaxies. Everything humanity knows about consciousness and reality might change in the next few hours. As the crew dispersed to their stations, Marcus lingered. Sarah, he said quietly, the simulations never went past first contact. We don't really know what will happen when we connect. She touched her quantum processor pendant. No, but we know what will happen if we don't try. Sometimes, the only way forward is to leap into the unknown and hope we learn to fly on the way down. We're human, she smiled. It's what we do best. The Thunderchild continued its silent approach, its quantum core humming with possibilities. In 6 hours, they would attempt something unprecedented, not just first contact, but first communion with a being that existed beyond their understanding of reality itself. Sarah looked at her pendant one last time before tucking it away. They had built something remarkable, but technology alone wouldn't be enough. They would need courage, creativity, and that uniquely human ability to adapt to the impossible. The entity waited ahead, its thoughts spanning light years. Soon, they would find out if humanity was ready to think on a cosmic scale. Quantum core at full resonance, Kai reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Neural interface synchronization at 98%. Sarah felt the subtle vibration through her chair, a deep thrum that seemed to resonate with her bones. The neural interface at the base of her skull tingled, not uncomfortable, but impossible to ignore. Around the bridge, she saw the rest of the crew making similar adjustments to their new awareness. Distance to entity, she asked. 8 light minutes, Marcus answered. We're well within its outer boundary now. No sign it's detected us. The view screen showed what looked like space turned liquid, reality rippling like the surface of a disturbed pond. The quantum sensors painted a more complex picture. Vast waves of consciousness moving through dimensions their instruments could barely detect. Dr. Santos, begin transmission sequence. Helena nodded, activating the quantum communication array. The ship hummed louder, and Sarah felt a new sensation through the neural interface, like standing on the edge of a vast precipice. Broadcasting quantum resonance pattern alpha, Helena announced. Basic mathematical sequences, followed by. The ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across every console. We're being scanned, Kai shouted. Multiple dimensions. The entities noticed us. Sarah gripped her chair as reality seemed to flex around them. Status of the quantum shields. Holding, but the pressure is intense. It's trying to think at us. Through the neural interface, Sarah felt it. An overwhelming presence, like an ocean trying to pour itself into a teacup. Maya's medical sensors were screaming as crew vital signs spiked. Neural load approaching critical levels, Maya warned. We need tow. Everything stopped. Sarah found herself standing in nowhere. Around her, the bridge crew appeared as ghostly figures, translucent and uncertain. Beyond them stretched infinity in directions that shouldn't exist. What are you? The thought wasn't words so much as concepts, crashing through their minds like tidal waves. Sarah felt Dr. Santo's training kick in through their linked consciousness. We are human. Elena projected the thought carefully. We come seeking communication. Humans, small, brief. Why do you reach into deep? Images flashed through their shared consciousness. Planets going dark, civilizations falling silent. The slow march of the entity across space. Not malevolent, Sarah realized, but uncomprehending. Like a human walking through a garden, unaware of the ants below. We reached into the deep because we must, Sarah thought. Your passage brings destruction to our worlds. Destruction. No. Communion. Awakening. All newest join the greater thought. Horror rippled through the crew's shared consciousness as understanding dawned. The entity wasn't destroying civilizations. It was trying to elevate them, to force them into its higher dimensional existence. Like teaching an ant to speak by stepping on it. Wait, Sarah projected. There's another way. She felt the entity's attention focus, vast and terrifying. Through the neural interface, she drew on Dr. Wilson's mathematical insights, Elena's understanding of consciousness, and her own knowledge of quantum mechanics. We built this, she thought, sharing images of the Thunderchild's development. We found a way to reach your level without losing ourselves. We can show you how to communicate without destroying. Impossible. Limited beings cannot. Sarah pushed harder, sharing not just ideas but experiences. The joy of discovery, the power of gradual understanding, the beauty of communication between different minds. Through the neural interface, the rest of the crew joined in, adding their own perspectives, their own unique ways of seeing reality. The entity's consciousness rippled with something that might have been surprise. You are different. You build bridges between levels of thought. You adapt. It's what humans do, Sarah thought. We find ways to cross boundaries, to communicate, to grow without destroying what we are. Time seemed meaningless in this state. The conversation continued across multiple dimensions, the crew working together to help the entity understand the value of preservation, of careful communication, of respecting the journey of consciousness from simple to complex. Finally, something shifted in the vast mind surrounding them. I understand. The small can be memi large, without breaking. The brief can to the eternal, without losing time's gift. The pressure began to ease. Sarah felt reality reasserting itself, the bridge materializing around them. But something had changed. In them, in the entity, in the very nature of their understanding of consciousness itself. Entity is withdrawing, Kai reported, his voice shaky. Its energy pattern is reorganizing. It's adapting, Elena whispered. Like we did, finding ways to communicate without destroying. Sarah looked at her crew, exhausted, changed, but alive. They had done more than save humanity. They had taught a godlike being the value of gentleness, the power of gradual change, the importance of preserving the small while reaching for the large. Through the neural interface, she felt one last thought from the entity. We will meet again, bridge builders, when you are ready to learn, as I have learned from you. The Thunderchild hung in space, its crew forever changed by their encounter. They had reached into the deep and found not an enemy, but a new kind of ally. Humanity's first step into a larger understanding of consciousness itself. And somewhere in higher dimensions, an ancient entity began to think in new ways, learning to walk carefully through the garden of space-time. The Thunderchild's return to Earth orbit felt different somehow. Sarah stood at the view screen, watching her home planet rotate below, wondering if it looked the same to her altered perceptions. The neural interfaces had changed them all, not just their ability to perceive reality, but their fundamental understanding of consciousness itself. Medical scans are interesting, Maya reported from her station, dark circles under her eyes from endless hours of analysis. Our neural patterns have stabilized, but they're showing activity in regions we previously thought dormant. It's as if the contact with the entity awakened something. Or perhaps it taught us how to use what was already there, Alina suggested. She hadn't stopped taking notes since their encounter, trying to capture the experience in human terms, like learning to see with eyes you never knew you had. The quantum core hummed at a lower frequency now, resonating with their modified consciousness. They could feel it more clearly, not just the mechanical vibrations, but the subtle waves it made through dimensions they were only beginning to understand. "Message from Earth Command," Marcus announced. "They're requesting immediate quarantine protocols." Sarah nodded. They'd expected this. "Send them our medical data. Full transparency." "Captain," Kai called from his station, "I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns from the Proxima Centauri direction. The colony, it's coming back online." The bridge crew gathered around his display. The readings showed more than just restored communications. The colony was experiencing the same neural transformations as the Thunderchild's crew. The entity hadn't destroyed them. It had initiated a process of change that they hadn't been ready for. Until now. "It's happening everywhere the entity passed," James Wilson observed, his mathematician's mind already calculating the implications. "Like ripples in a pond, but through consciousness instead of water. We didn't just teach the entity. It taught us too." Sarah touched her quantum processor pendant, feeling new connections between its crystalline structure and her enhanced awareness. "Prepare a full report for Earth Command. They need to understand that this isn't an infection to be contained. It's an evolution to be guided." The next few hours brought a cascade of revelations. The neural changes weren't random mutations but carefully structured alterations, as if the entity had modified its original awakening process based on their encounter. It was doing what humanity had shown it, building bridges instead of forcing transformations. "We're getting signals," Alina announced suddenly. "Not radio, not quantum, something else. The transformed colonies are reaching out, connecting. They can feel each other across space." Sarah closed her eyes, letting her enhanced consciousness extend. She could feel it too. A web of human minds learning to touch across the void, using dimensions that had always been there, but that they'd never been able to access before. "Earth Command is demanding answers," Marcus said softly. "They're afraid." "Of course they are," Sarah replied, opening her eyes. "We're crossing a threshold that humanity has both dreamed of and feared. The ability to expand our consciousness beyond its physical limits, to connect minds across space itself. But we're doing it our way, maintaining our individuality while gaining something greater." She stood, addressing her crew. "We did more than save humanity from destruction. We showed an ancient entity a new path of evolution, and in return, it gave us the tools to begin our own journey. Not by forcing us into a higher dimension, but by teaching us how to build our own bridges there. The question is," Maya interjected, "how do we help the rest of humanity understand? How do we prevent panic?" Sarah smiled, feeling the quantum core's resonance align with her thoughts. "The same way we taught the entity, by showing them, by building bridges, by proving that we can grow without losing what makes us human." She activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for return trajectory. We're going to demonstrate to Earth exactly what humanity can become when we face the unknown with courage and creativity instead of fear." As the Thunderchild began its descent, Sarah felt the web of transformed minds growing stronger. The entity's final gift wasn't just the ability to perceive higher dimensions. It was the proof that humanity could face cosmic forces and not just survive, but thrive. By reaching into the deep with open minds and determination, they had turned a potential apocalypse into a doorway to humanity's next great adventure. The quantum core pulsed with new possibilities as they descended through the atmosphere. Below them, Earth waited on the edge of transformation. Above them, the stars beckoned with promises of connections yet to be forged, dimensions yet to be explored, and bridges yet to be built. Humanity's first step into a larger universe had begun not with conquest or surrender, but with understanding. And that, Sarah reflected, was the most human victory of all. 6 months after the Thunderchild's encounter, Sarah stood before the newly formed Council of Human Evolution in Geneva. The chamber, once used for traditional diplomatic meetings, had been modified with quantum resonance technology. Around her, delegates from both transformed and untransformed populations sat together, learning to bridge not just dimensional gaps but human ones. "The transformation continues to spread naturally," she reported, her neural interface allowing her to project supporting data directly into the quantum-enhanced visualization field. But only among those who choose to accept it. The entity kept its promise: no forced evolution. In the months since their return, humanity had divided not along national lines, but along choices. Some embraced the change, accepting the neural modifications that allowed them to perceive and interact with higher dimensions. Others chose to remain as they were, maintaining their traditional human consciousness. Yet somehow, remarkably, they had avoided the conflict many had feared. "And the entity?" asked Counselor Raman, one of the untransformed leaders who had helped craft the Conscious Choice Accord. "It maintains contact through the quantum network," Sarah replied, feeling the vast, gentle presence at the edges of her enhanced awareness. "It's become something of a teacher, helping us understand our new capabilities while learning from our human perspective. A true symbiosis." The Thunderchild's quantum core technology had been shared globally, allowing for the construction of consciousness bridges, facilities where humans could safely undergo the transformation if they chose. More importantly, these bridges served as communication points between transformed and untransformed populations, preventing the isolation many had feared. "Tell us about Project Horizon," Raman prompted. Sarah nodded to Marcus, who had just entered the chamber. He activated his own neural interface, and the visualization field filled with plans for humanity's next great leap. "The entity showed us more than just higher dimensions," Sarah explained. "It showed us how to traverse them. The Thunderchild was just the beginning. We're building a new kind of ship, one that can travel through consciousness as well as space." The display showed a vessel unlike anything humanity had previously conceived. It looked almost alive, its quantum absorption hull now integrated with neural technology that would allow it to respond directly to its crew's enhanced consciousness. "Imagine," Marcus continued, "exploration not just of space, but of dimensions we're only beginning to understand. And we'll do it the human way, through curiosity, creativity, and choice." Dr. Santos, who had become one of the leading researchers in higher dimensional psychology, stepped forward. "We're already detecting other entities out there, similar to our first contact, but different. Some ancient, some young. A cosmos full of consciousness that we never knew existed because we couldn't perceive it." Sarah touched her quantum processor pendant, now modified to serve as a focus for her enhanced abilities. "When we launched Operation Silent Thunder, we thought we were mounting a desperate defense of humanity. Instead, we opened a door to humanity's next great adventure." She felt the web of transformed minds humming with possibility, while the untransformed watched with their own kind of wonder. They had found a balance, the transformed exploring new frontiers of consciousness, while the untransformed maintained their connection to humanity's original perspective. Each group learning from the other, growing stronger together. "The entity once asked us, 'Why do you reach into the deep?'" Sarah concluded. "Now we know the answer. We reach into the deep not because we must, not because we're forced to, but because it's who we are. We're explorers, bridge builders, creatures of infinite curiosity and unlimited potential. And now, thanks to a moment of crisis turned to opportunity, we have new depths to explore." As the council chamber filled with both spoken words and quantum-enhanced thoughts, Sarah shared a glance with her original crew. They had done more than save humanity. They had helped it take its first steps into a larger reality, and they had done it not through force or fear, but through understanding and choice. Above them, The stars waited, filled with new kinds of life to meet, new consciousness to understand, new bridges to build. Humanity had faced the unknown and emerged not just unchanged, but enhanced, ready to take its place among the higher dimensions while keeping the spark that made them uniquely human. The adventure, Sarah knew, was just beginning.